Duels, one of the coolest parts of Warhammer 40K. Some of the most iconic ones are Karn vs Sigismund, Jubal Khan vs Sigismund, Nikona Sherokin vs Lucius the Eternal, and many more. But of course, the coolest duels in Warhammer 40K are the Primarch duels. I mean, take a genetically engineered demigod and throw him into an arena with one of his equally god-tier brothers and you're guaranteed to see action that is comparable to a Michael Bay movie. Take, for example, Demon Primarch Mortartion vs Jagatai Khan, a cinematic masterpiece and peak fiction. And then there are duels that are so absurd and lore-breaking, you can't help but wonder if the author wrote it at 3 in the morning, upside down in a Waffle House booth. In honor of the beginning of my brand new duel series, which starts next week with the iconic matchup of Leman Russ vs Jagatai Khan, I am summoning it in with this video, which is reaching peak autistic levels by ranking every single Primarch duel across the entire 40k universe. From the ones that changed Warhammer 40k history, to the ones that made me want to close the book, stare at the ceiling, and genuinely reconsider my life choices. We're grading them on 3 heavily milk-tested criteria. First, the cow scale of coolness. Did it make you fist pump the air, or did you physically cringe? 2. The lore impact. Did it actually matter, or was it just 2 guys slapping each other for dramatic effect? And thirdly, lore IQ. Does it make sense, or does it actively make power scaling incredibly difficult for me and my beautiful herd? Some of these fights are absolute cinema, some seem like poorly written fan fiction, and some, well, I'll let The Rock explain it.
And I've got to say, in all honesty, it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
I hope you have some hot cocoa waiting for you, because this is going to be another long video. So we might as well jump straight into the cow hole. Say it with me, fellas. It's time to Powerscale. Hello, my beloved herd. It is I, a fallen cow, back with another video. And today, we are going to be ranking every single Primarch duel from across Warhammer 40k. So in total, that is 36. I may have missed 1 or 2 small duels, like say with Angels Exterminatus with Perturabo and Fulgrim, but I was like, that duel is like 5 seconds long, and it's not really a duel, so I didn't really include that one. But if I missed any others, please let me know down in the comments. So we're starting from the very beginning with Leman Russ versus the Lion in the book The Great Wolf, and we're ending with the most recent lore update in the Arc of Omens with Lionel Jonson versus Angron. I would like to remind everyone, and I talk about this extensively, that Arc of Omens came out in 2023. So we haven't received anything about the Lion or any other real Primarch fight since then, which fucking sucks. God damn it, Games Workshop, just update your lore for Christ's sake. Now, as with any tier list, what am I wearing? This is a fundamental part of a Fallen Cow tier list, is figuring out what am I wearing. Well, in today's episode, I am wearing a pair of SpongeBob-themed PJs and a comfy black hoodie. Not too unique, but enough comfy that I can sit here for 5 hours if need be. So, we have our 36 duels. We're going to be ranking them with the 3 criteria I laid out in the intro, and slotting them into the 6 spots on the tier list. We have Peak, A, B, C, D, and Cow's Corral. I'm going to go through each of these briefly and just talk about what each placement means. So, Peak is the duel meets all 3 criteria. It's incredibly well written, it's cool as fuck, and of course, the power scaling is very, very sound. A tier means that the duel has 1 or 2 flaws, but it mostly hits all 3 criteria though. B tier, it has several flaws, but still is a very solid duel. C, below average duel, but not horrible. It still hits 1 or 2 of the criteria. D tier, you are categorized as sucking. You miss 2 of the criteria and there are multiple flaws with your duel, and most likely I'm gonna hate on you for 20 minutes. Cow's Corral should have never existed. It's a pathetic duel, multiple flaws with it, and it makes me want to drive on the freeway without a seatbelt on. So those are our 6 tiers. We have our 36 duels. Oh my god, I almost forgot. Let me drink some coffee. I have a big cup of black coffee right here in my classic but first coffee mug with Snorlax on the cover. Let me take a big old ASMR swig. Oh man, that was a big one. I promised the herd last time that I would do more ASMR sips throughout the video, so I assure you there's a lot more where that came from. But with that said, my herd, might as well jump into this fella. There are so many duels, I had no idea the Primarchs like to fight that much, but hey, it's always cinematic peak. Let's start the rankings with Lion Jonson versus Leman Russ in the book The Great Wolf. So right off the bat, we have 2 Leman Russ duels. Yes, 2 Leman Russ duels, and spoiler, he loses both. I'm going to go into more detail on both of these fights in my Leman Russ versus Chekatai first duel video, but I am 100% correct in that opinion. Go eat a whole bag of bananas, you silly Space Wolf fans. But I digress. I'll get into that more in detail, but the reason I'm saying that is because I recently reread The Great Wolf just to make sure I'm completely not out of my mind, and I'm right in my opinion, because I'll just give a little TLDR because why not? This is a Fallen Cow video. We like to go on tangents. Hold on. Let me take another sip of coffee. Ooh, that's hot. Okay. Yeah, but okay. So Leman Russ and the Lion duel, and there's 2 things that I like to know here. Some people think that it's just a simple honor duel between brothers and then they're not going all out. It states in the text that both Primarchs are at the intent to kill each other. They're completely at 100% fighting capacity or whatever. 2, Lion Jonson disarms Leman Russ and has the killing stroke on him within the first 5 minutes of the duel, but does not take it, and thus the duel continues. But we're not talking about who's better than who, even though I'd love to, but we're ranking the duels as a whole. So, like I said, I recently reread The Great Wolf, and I absolutely loved it. This duel is pretty darn good. It pretty much happens because Leman Russ wanted to get a kill on a traitor governor, or just a tyrant governor in general, and he made an oath to do it, and then the Lion got there first and took his head instead. So Leman Russ got pretty mad and launched an attack at Lion Jonson. They fight for several days throughout the palace. They destroy half of it. They fall from, I think, 50 meters up. They survive. They keep fighting. And since I talked about Lion Jonson disarming Leman has the chance to, I think, knock out Lion Jonson. He sees the opportunity, but he does not take it. Instead, he chooses to laugh, and then the Lion sucker punches him, ending the duel. But overall, it's pretty awesome. It is a great duel. I think it is a 10 on the cow scale of coolness. Like, who doesn't love 2 Primarchs just bashing the hell out of each other throughout a palace? And like, it's just cinematic as hell. It's a Michael Bay movie staple right there. Lore impact, not so much. It makes Leman Russ seem like a fucking idiot, because while they're fighting, the 2 legions, the Space Wolves and the Dark Angels, are still attacking this palace. So the Space Wolves, who Leman Russ is like, what the hell, Lion? You left us out to dry. They're still dying. And Leman Russ decided to attack the Lion instead of, helping his sons out. But that is a classic Space Wolves L. So, doesn't make a lot of sense on why it happened, but it's still cool as hell. For power scaling, it makes complete sense. The Lion is the better duelist, easily disarms Leman. Leman is he's stronger and is the better brawler. So overall, it makes sense. I'm gonna give it a solid A tier. I think that is a solid placement for our first duel. Yeah, I mean, I would go check this book out, guys. If you guys don't know, I love to send PDFs of certain books in my Discord. So if you guys would like to come check out some PDFs, come join my Discord, and I may or may not send you one. It's just the cow experience. But yeah, so the Lionel Jonson versus Leman Russ, the first duel, the Great Wolf, is in A tier. Next, Angron versus Russ from the book Betrayer. So this duel, it kind of happens completely off screen, which is a major issue. So Angron has implemented the butcher nails throughout his legion. They just massacred a whole entire planet's population. And Leman Russ shows up to, you know, kind of like, hey bro, maybe you should not be doing that. He's trying to give him like the big brother approach, trying to show him the error of his ways type of thing. And eventually they come to blows, and the whole fight between Angron and Leman Russ happens off screen. And then what ends up happening is we return to the fight. Angron has his boot on Leman Russ's face or throat, whatever. He's on the ground being told to heal, like the silly dog he is. And Leman Russ has all of his Space Wolves surround Angron, and they're ready to kill him. So pretty much Angron won the duel, but the World Eaters lost the battle. But the problem is, we don't really know how the Angron and Leman Russ fight went down, because once again, all of it happened off screen. A classic GW cop-out. So, what do I think about this duel? So, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of hate it. I kind of hate it for the fact that it completely happens off screen, that we get the beginning and we get the end, and we miss the actual girth of the fight with the stuff that actually matters. So we don't really gain too much knowledge, and we don't know how well it's written. So right off the bat, I don't really like it. 2, it causes a massive issue in the community where Space Wolf fans think that the intent to kill or whatever caused Angron to win this duel, because Leman Russ apparently wasn't trying that hard. Are you gonna fucking tell me that this same guy who just fought Lionel Jonson, and it's stated in the book that they were both fighting with the intent to kill, that they were going all out, is not going to fight Angron, who is arguably close to or even maybe at or above Lionel Jonson in strength? That makes no sense, and that argument is completely invalid. But it still causes a massive issue throughout the community where we constantly argue about this fight because we don't know what happens, guys. If Leman Russ wasn't trying, I would love to see that in the text. You know what I mean? Like, I would just like some more context on this fight so we can properly evaluate it. Instead, we just have the outcome, and based on the outcome, you have to say, okay, Angron fucking beat the shit out of this guy. So, 2, there's just so much controversy on this duel that it makes me want to peel my face off. And 3, it's just, I mean, the power scaling is sound technically, but once again, we just don't know anything about it, and it doesn't help anything. Because it's weird. Base Angron is like a top 5 Primarch. But his feats, he fights Leman Russ and he defeats him off screen. So we already know nothing really about that. 2, he fights Girlyman and is about to kill Girlyman. But obviously we all know Girlyman is not a strong Primarch. It just kind of sucks because it's like, I love base Angron, and then he fights Horus. Where is it? He fights Horus in the new Ashes of the Imperium book, and then he loses. And obviously that's post Davin Horus, but it just, give me some more Angron feats, man. Like, come on, Angry Ron needs some love. So overall, it's just a very controversial duel. It's not, it's like the set that the writer Aaron Dubinsky really set the stage for it, and the outcome from the duel showing Angron's descent and his legion's descent into madness and butchery is awesome. So the writing there is fantastic, but the power scaling is fucking hard. It makes sense, but I don't like that we miss a whole section of it. And you're gonna see this throughout this video, that some of these duels, they're cut so short, or we'll miss some important detail, or it'll completely happen off screen. I'm gonna get into this duel, which really drives me nuts, or this duel. Like, Ashes of the Imperium is a great book, but the Primarch duels are cut short because John French did not want to have to deal with writing a Primarch fight. And it's so goddamn obvious that it makes me want to drive on the freeway at night, drinking 4 cartons of milk excessively while spilling all over myself without a seatbelt on, and 3 cop cars driving behind me, and I'm tossing cookies at them like it's Mario Kart. That was a very strange metaphor. I think I've had too much coffee, but hey, let me have another sip. Oh man. Yeah, guys, I drink straight black coffee. It's actually like very delicious, but that's besides the point. Yeah, so I think it's well written. I think Betrayer is an excellent book. I think the duel makes sense on the scale. It's cool. It's cool seeing Angron win, but I'm gonna try to be unbiased here. I like seeing Angron beat the shit out of Leman Russ. But if I'm being objective here, the whole fight happens off screen. The 2 legions clash, and then we know that Angron would have died if Leman Russ had given the command. But Leman Russ in turn would have probably died. I'm gonna say it's a decent ranking, and then power scaling, obviously I hate it. So where does that put us? It probably puts us in B or C tier, I want to say. It's definitely not A or D. I don't think it's as bad as I'm making it out to be. I think I'm just being a loser and getting a little too angry about Angry Ron. I'm going to put it in C tier for right now. Maybe we'll put it up in B tier in a little bit, but it's very well written. And I'm just bummed that we missed like the actual fight itself. So I'm gonna put it in C tier for right now. It just sucks that this duel it's like a potential duel. Like, oh my god, the Angron versus Leman Russ fight, but we just never see it. And there's just so much shit that comes from this book. Like, the Dropside Massacre book, I had so many Space Wolf fans just commenting random nonsense. And let's briefly talk about that, even though I'm going to cover it once again in the next video. They love to bring up this fight, the Horus versus Leman Russ fight in Wolfsbane. They don't know how broken this spear is, and we'll get into that in a second. I'll cover that when we get to that part in the video. But I had so many comments, and I was like, what are we talking about here, guys? It was silly. Okay. Oh my god. This is such a cool image, by the way. It's Jotaro and Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but Leman Russ and Magnus. I don't know if you guys know that show, but it is a gas freaking show. I would recommend going to watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's a little I don't want to be like fucked up, but it's like a little silly. I'm gonna say that it's a little silly of a show, but it's fucking gas. Oh my god, it's so gas. But Magnus the Red versus Leman Russ from the book 8,000 Suns. And oh my god, I hate this fight so goddamn much. And it's not because of Leman Russ. I feel like people are gonna think I'm like hating on Leman Russ. We have apparently 3 duels right off the bat. But I hate the guy, but I'm not hating on him actively as of right now. I just think there's a lot of silly fans out there that make me hate Leman Russ because they just love him, and I'm just indifferent, and that makes me hate him for reasons. I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought here. This fight, I hate it because there's so much context you have to get into this fight to explain how Leman Russ could defeat Magnus the Red. Because later, we see, in which book? Echoes of Eternity. Where the heck is it? Oh yeah. Magnus versus Vulkan and Echoes of Eternity. Magnus just atomizes Vulkan. Like, easily. He does it like this. And then he straight up manipulates his physical form so he can't breathe, and he dies again. This fight shows off Magnus at his full height of his power. Why couldn't he just do that to Leman Russ? Well, folks, there's context to this fight. There's several points of context to this fight. First, Magnus the Red is weakened in this duel, and people once again love to argue that that doesn't make any sense. I have literally an excerpt, and I'm going to read to you from the book A Thousand Suns. Magnus rose to his full height, his body diminished from its former glory, as though a fundamental part of him had been left on Terra after his confrontation with his father. And here's another one if you don't believe me. One of many, the Crimson King had been broken, shattered like a mirror thrown in anger. It began when he breached the wards on Terra, and it was ended by the Wolf's Wrath. So, when he goes and warns the Emperor on Terra, which happens before this, he loses a part of his soul. So his soul is already slightly shattered, and what that means is he's diminished in power. So he's already in a weaker form. We don't exactly know, truthfully, how strong or weak he is at this point, and I would like to just say that there are 10 shards. It took him around 6 or 7 shards to get back to almost full power. So I like to say that he's at 75% or maybe 60, somewhere around that, because the shard he lost was his noble aspect of him. So that I don't know if that has any bearing on how powerful he is, because once again, 40k power scaling is fucking hard as shit. So that's more like guesswork, but he was weakened in some capacity. 2. During this fight, Magnus had to cast spells to prevent the Space Wolves and the Custodians from intervening. He literally created a water cage around their fight so the other loyalist factions and forces could not intervene with Leman Russ. And it's insane. Like, he's weakened, he's already having to fight a Primarch who's a pretty strong anti-psyker Primarch, and then he's having to use spells and magic to stop other forces from intervening. It's crazy. And the spell he casts immediately turns those who touch the water around them into jelly. That means it's a pretty potent spell if they're able to do that to Custodians who already have a slight amount of the Emperor's psychic might within each of them. Pretty insane. Okay, 3rd. Magnus impales Leman Russ during their fight with a bolt of pure thought, and Magnus goes right through his chest into his heart, I believe. And I wouldn't say he's dead to rights, but he's wounded. Magnus has the advantage at that point, and then Leman Russ's 2 wolves jump on Magnus and separate them for a moment, allowing Leman Russ to recover from that wound. So it becomes a 3v1 at one point after Magnus wounds Leman Russ. Number 4, Leman Russ gets struck again by Magnus, and it says this in the text, Leman Russ blindly swings his blade. He blindly swings his blade, and it hits Magnus the Red in the fucking eye. His one singular eye. You can't make this up, folks. Imagine you get stabbed, and you're just like, oh, fuck it. Magnus's eye is somewhere out there, and you just swing. You just swing for the fences, and you manage to hit your enemy's eye. Like, that's bullshit. And I've seen this elsewhere, that Tzeentch is the one who intervened there and caused Leman Russ to do that. I truthfully don't know if I believe that. That might be too much cope, too much glazing for Magnus the Red. But either way, it's so goddamn silly that happened in the first place. 5th, Magnus the Red is also limiting his power in his duel with Leman Russ to help Azek Ahriman cast a spell to transport all the 1,000 suns off the planet. So we have a weakened Magnus who's doing multiple things at once. He's the multitasker of the goddamn world, and now he's also limiting his power so he can help Ahriman escape the planet. There's just so much goddamn context, and it sucks that I have to explain that, because it doesn't make sense that Leman Russ defeats Magnus the Red. That there has to be so much context in this fight for it to make sense. Because when you create a Primarch that is technically the 2nd strongest Psyker in the universe, he should be able to defeat any of the Primarchs or almost any entity in the universe unless they have null technology or unless they're a fucking Necron. That's the only way that Magnus would technically kind of lose. So you have to set up all this silly little context for Leman Russ to win this fight. And it sucks to explain that. And it really does. Because like you get these, it just sucks to explain it, man. The context just sucks. And it drives me nuts that you have to go through this much detail for this fight to make sense. The power scaling just straight up sucks. It tracks when you get all this information down, but it took fucking forever to track all this information down and make a logical explanation for why Leman Russ won this fight. I'm trying to be unbiased here, guys, and I know I'm gonna get shit on for this, but Leman Russ, he should not even be close to Mr. Magnus here. This duel should have been over in a blink of an eye. If Magnus the Red can atomize Vulkan, why can't he do that to Leman Russ? Well, the fucking context explains why. It's insane, man. And I hate that I have to explain the context. The duel makes sense on the scale of logic. Like, it's well written. The burning of Prospero is going on. Magnus descends to fight Leman Russ. But at the same time, Magnus the Red has lurked in his tower the whole battle of Prospero because he thought he deserved his fate. And then he walks out. He's like, all right, my whole city is getting reduced to rubble. My sons are getting murdered. I guess I'll fight in this battle because I feel guilty all of a sudden. And it just makes Magnus the Red seem like a fucking idiot. He is a fucking idiot, as we've seen through his actions. But it just makes him seem more like an idiot. So, I mean, it's all right written. Like, Grant McNeil does a decent job, but I think the duel itself sucks because there's so much context to it. The lead up to it is good. The duel itself is not well written, and Magnus the Red just seems like a fucking idiot the whole time. The scale of cool, I really don't like this fight too much. It's just one of those cases where GW, or just the Black Library in general, they just underscore these psychers because they either don't know how to write them, or two, that they know how to write them, but they know that they can't have these powerful psychers do these things, like atomize Primarchs or throw fleets around in orbit. They can't have them do that because the duel will be over, so they nerf them. And you have to logically find reasons why they were nerfed. For example, these many reasons that were going on during this Magnus the Red fight. It drives me nuts. I'm not going to put it in Cow's Corral, but it is going to go in D tier. I'm going to put it in D tier. We have 3 Leman Russ fights right off the bat. D, C, and A. I really don't like this fight, and you guys can argue with me in the comments. Once again, this is an objectively opinionated Falling Cow tier list on silly Primarch duels, and if you want to argue with me, let's argue. I'm totally cool with that. But I just don't like this fight. Alright, Fulgrim versus Ferrus Menace. We have 2 Fulgrim versus Ferrus Menace fights from the book Fulgrim. Both of these fights are kind of similar in the fact that they're very, very short, which is surprising as hell, because shouldn't this fight be one of the most, I don't know, monumental occurrences in the early heresy? But it really is over, I think, in 4 or 5 pages, which is outrageous. While the Emperor's fight with Horus is almost half the book. The duality of man. So yeah, both of these fights happen in the book Fulgrim. This one happens as Fulgrim tries to convince Ferrus to join the War Master. So before Istvan 5, and this happens during Istvan 5. The first fight is actually not too shabby. The 2 Primarchs trade blows. Fulgrim even headbutts Ferrus, and Ferrus destroys Fireblade. He catches it with his hands and smashes it, or squeezes it until it shatters. And then the 2 get knocked out by an explosion, and Fulgrim's the first one up. So it's not a very conclusive fight, since Ferrus gets knocked out and stays knocked out for an extended period of time. Maybe you could draw from that conclusion that maybe Ferrus has less durability than Fulgrim, but I think that's silly. So you can't really draw too many conclusions from this. The power scaling is not great. The fight is pretty short, but it's well written. I can't really hate on it for that. Maybe like a C tier placement. It's just really short, guys. It's literally maybe like page and a half to 2 pages of length. It's just a short fight, and that's a common theme, like I've stated, that some of these Primarch fights, they're just very short for silly reasons, but it's an alright fight. It's just, they trade blows, they get stunned by an explosion, and Fulgrim gets up faster and leaves Ferrus on the ground, and they escape. That's pretty much it. This one is pretty relative to this. It's very short. Fulgrim and Ferrus are kind of evenly matched, and Ferrus actually has Fulgrim on his back foot, but the layer blade gives Fulgrim a slight little amp, which allows him to easily disarm Ferrus and decapitate him. This fight is weird because it's very short, so you don't really get a lot from it, power scaling wise. And then Fulgrim seems slightly conflicted during this fight. He doesn't really want to kill Ferrus, so he's not really in his best state. But again, that's kind of hard to really justify. It kind of sounds like a cop-out answer. It's like, Fulgrim really wasn't trying to fight that hard. He was being really conflicted during that battle. So it's kind of like, fuck. It's hard to make that argument when it's more implied than actually stated in the text. And then Ferrus is winning, and then Fulgrim gets a little amp and defeats Mr. Ferrus Menace. Overall, it's pretty short, which is a bummer. I wish it was longer. I wish there was more cool scenes, because we get Ferrus Menace taking Forgebreaker to the dome, and which is pretty damn cool. When we get Ferrus getting, or Fulgrim getting wounded in turn, they each land one single blow on each other that's deadly, and then Ferrus gets decapitated. I just wish both of these duels were longer, but they're not horrible in that sense. It's just like the inverse of Angron versus Russ, where we don't even see this fight. We see this fight, but it's fucking short as hell, and it bums the hell out of me. I'm gonna put both of them in C tier. It's just such a monumental duel. This one at least, and it should have been. I'll put it ahead because it's just a better duel objectively, but it's just so short, man. It doesn't deserve this length. It should have been at least 5 or 6 pages. We should have gotten more descriptions of what was going on. I think Fulgrim's fight versus an Avatar Arcane in the same book was longer, honestly, which is massively disappointing. But I think C tier is a fair rating for this one. After them, we have another Istvan 5 fight. Corax versus Lorgar from the book The First Heretic, and this one is an easy peak. This is a peak fight. So, pretty much what happens is Corvus Corax is tearing through the Galvor back, and Lorgar, who has a prophecy that he would die to Corvus Corax if they fought, charges into the melee, and it goes as you would expect. Corvus Corax absolutely annihilates Lorgar and is pretty much gonna kill him until Conrad Curze, who we see in this image, intervenes and stops the killing blow. So, overall, it's a sick fight. It makes sense. Corvus Corax is vastly superior to Lorgar in combat, and we see this during this fight. It's just overall a peak fight, especially when you see Corvus Corax, who doesn't really have a lot of lore, get some phenomenal lore, because he disappears for the rest of the heresy, which is so goddamn annoying. But I think this fight is pure peak. I don't really need to even talk about it even more. It's peak. Vulkan versus Mortartion, new book. So these next 2 duels are from Ashes of the Imperium, and like these 2 duels, it's so short. It's not even a page. It's maybe half a page, and we see Vulkan hit Mortartion, who tanks it, and then Vulkan catches Morty's scythe, and that's pretty much the duel. And then the POV who's watching it says they traded blows in a flurry of movements that were too hard to track. That's it, and we don't know the conclusion of this or anything like that. I I don't like the Ashes of the Imperium fights. I like the book, but I don't like the fights. I think John French, who's usually a very good author, kind of copped out with some of these fights because he either didn't want to write them or he didn't want to create a controversial take. So he just made them all happen off screen except for, well, he made this one happen off screen, but then he did this one, which we're going to get into in a second. But it's a cool duel on premise, but nothing happens. Really, we don't gain any power scaling lore from it. The logic, I mean, that makes sense logically because Vulkan is the strongest Primarch, so it makes sense that he could block silence, and it makes sense that Morty, who is the most durable Primarch, could tank a strike from Vulkan. So I guess the Primarch power scaling makes sense, but once again, it's such a short duel that we don't see anything from it. We don't have a conclusion. Did it even really need to happen? So it's going in D tier. It just seems like John French wanted a Primarch fight to happen in his book, or 2 Primarch fights to happen in his book, so he made this one happen. Did it need to happen? No. Angron versus Horus. So this fight, I'm going to say it's a little bit better than this one, but it's, once again, it's so short, and this is Angron, who is supposed to be one of the best prowess-wise Primarchs. He fought in the gladiator pits for years and years, and he's constantly described as one of the strongest Primarchs. But like I discussed earlier, his base form does not have a lot of feats, which absolutely sucks. So we get this fight in Ashes of the Imperium, which is Angron in his base form versus Horus in his post-Davin form. So he has base, like, just a normal Chaos amp from being corrupted by Chaos. And as we discussed in my Primarch power scaling video on the Dropside Massacre, apparently this buff is fucking insane because Horus destroys Angron in their 1v1 duel. Horus takes away one of Angron's chain axes, so they draw on paper, but it's stated in the text that if Horus had wanted to, he could have killed Angron. So it's painfully obvious that if Horus, who was holding back in this fight, had wanted to kill Angron, who was going for the killing blow, he would have easily done it. It just kind of, it's a weird duel. It's kind of like written like shit, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like some of the people agreed with me in the comments. I was like, this duel is kind of just not very good. It's not well written. I guess it makes sense when you take a look at the context and see, I guess, how powerful Horus is during this fight. It's not very cool. I'm not gonna, honestly, I'm gonna put it in D tier. It's just, these two duels, man, they didn't need to happen. I don't know why John French made these duels happen. I think it's just, he was writing this book and he's like, what's missing here, guys? We got the Loyalists getting betrayed. We got new Primarch interactions. What else do we need? Oh, yes. We need 2 random Primarch slop fest fights that have no bearing on the story. So I guess Angron's character gets better because he's trying to be honorable. He's trying to alert the Loyalists that they're going to get betrayed. And Horus stops him. But does that really need to happen to add to his character? That's debatable. And then this one is just so short. Both of these duels are just so short. It's kind of like this, but worse, because they didn't even need to happen. Like, this was essential to Fulgrim's character. This, not so much. Honestly, the whole Ashes of the Imperium book didn't really need to be written, if we're being quite frank, but it's Games Workshop, guys. They need that money. All right, so we got 2 more D tiers. We're not looking great right now. Two fights above B, 6 below B. Oh boy. Yeah, not the greatest scoring so far. Okay, Vulkan versus Curze from the book Vulkan Lives. I don't like this fight either, guys. It's not even really a duel. So Conrad Curze has been torturing Vulkan for months and months, killing him over and over again because Vulkan is a perpetual. Vulkan gets his hammer at one point and beats the fuck out of Curze. But there's some context to this fight. It's not even a duel, really, because Curze wants to actively die. It's even said in the text that he's like, kill me. Do it, Vulkan. Do it. Kill me. Because he's trying to show that Vulkan is as low as him. So he's just like, kill me, end my life. You're stooping to my level. And Vulkan says no, and he teleports away with his hammer. So it's not even a fight. It's a meme fight. I think it's better than the rest of these, but once again, it doesn't. I'm gonna put it up here. maybe, I don't know. It's not really that much of a duel. It's a couple, it's just Vulkan pretty much beating the shit out of Curze, and Curze deserves it. I'll put it at the top of C because it's cool, it makes sense, but it's not actually a straight up duel. Yeah, because Curze wants to die. I'm gonna put it in C tier. Could have been better, but at least it's not as bad as the 3 in D tier right now. Mortartion versus the Khan. It's a peak fight. It's a peak fight. It's so well written. Chris Wright does a great goddamn job of writing this fight. It shows off the Khan's great speed abilities and his dueling capabilities, while also showing that Mortartion is one durable mother hecker, and that they are the perfect matchup for each of each other. Or their matchup is very equal because it's speed versus a tank. So in this duel, Jagatai Khan lands several blows on Mortartion that may have felled a lesser warrior, but Mortartion is so tanky that it doesn't really affect him that much. And Mortartion is so slow that he can't catch the Khan. So it's like a perfect battle. And an unmovable object meets a What's the saying? An immovable object meets a my cow brain. Let me drink some coffee. Maybe that'll activate my brain cells that never work. Hold on. Immovable object meets an unstoppable force. There we go. Sorry. It's just a great fight, and it makes sense for power scaling because they are both the perfect matchup for each other. Yeah, I think it's a great fight, well written. Does Morty justice, does the Khan justice. It's fucking cool. They're fighting in the burned out ruins of Prospero after Leman Russ had his little I'm gonna destroy the whole planet shtick. It's a great fight, and there's just so much weight and stakes to it that it makes sense why it happened. It helps both characters, both Primarchs. It's just a great fight. It also teases what's gonna happen later in Warhawk. So it's just a fucking great fight. Chris Wright is a master. Great. He's a great writer. Okay, we get to Betrayer. So we have 2 duels, and some people like to think that Girlyman fought Lorgar and Girlyman at the same time. Not really, guys. It was more like Lorgar fought Girlyman for a time, and then Angron jumped in, and Lorgar broke off so we could start Angron's ascension to demonhood. It's never really a 2v1 at any real point. Maybe for a brief second, but it's not ever a true 2v1. So Lorgar versus Girlyman is first. I'm going to say both of these fights are easily peak, but we'll talk about them more. I think they're top, actually, as of right now, because they're just so well written. The Betrayer is such a goddamn great book, man. So let's talk about Lorgar versus Girlyman first. So in this fight, Lorgar is actually slightly amped by his newly awakened psychic powers, and Girlyman is still in his base form. So it's actually a pretty evenly matched fight. Lorgar is actually slightly nerfed during this battle, as the warp is in flux, as he states in the text, and that he can't use his powers to their full extent, but he's still able to use a projected burst of telekinesis that staggers Girlyman. So Lorgar, even nerfed, is still able to use his telekinesis to stun Girlyman, which is kind of insane. Imagine if Lorgar wasn't nerfed during this fight. It would have been over. You gotta love how, no matter what, the Psychers have to be nerfed in some capacity, or these fights would not be fair. I mean, it makes sense. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's a consistent fact across all of Games Workshop that the Psychers always have to be nerfed in some silly capacity. But I think this book does a fair job of writing why the warp is in turmoil, because Lorgar and Angron, for those who don't know, have burnt a dozen worlds or more throughout the Shadow Crusade as they're trying to build the Ruin Storm. So it makes sense why Lorgar is nerfed in this fight. I just think it's kind of silly how it's always the goddamn case. So this fight is very evenly matched. It's very well written. Girlyman lands first blow, and then Lorgar lands the next 2 blows on Girlyman. I think it's just a peak fight overall. It's awesome. They're fighting on the world of Nuceria, where Angron fell and is about to rise to demonhood. Lorgar does a great job. It shows his character progression. During the battle, he even states that The future is rewiring itself, new pathways of possibility opening up. In this last year, he finally felt himself taking the mantle of the man he always meant to be. He even in his less humble moments hungered to face Corax again. Things wouldn't play out perfectly in the Raven Lord's favor next time. Of that, Lorgar was sure. So we see Lorgar already becoming the eventual demon prince he will become later in the current setting. So he's getting an amp from psychic abilities, he's becoming a cooler character overall, and he's just a better fighter overall. So I think if he wasn't nerfed in this fight, he would fuck Girlyman up easily. I think it's clear as day right there that Lorgar is already pretty damn powerful with these new psychic abilities. I mean, he's able to throw Space Marines around, tank plasma bolts, and do a lot more with his psychic abilities. I think it's even stated now as a Demon Prince or a Demon Primarch, he has the ability of Enuncia, which makes him even greater of a threat. We never see him use it, which sucks, but hopefully when he returns, whenever that is, we'll get to see that. But I digress. This is a great fight. And then Angron jumps in. So Angron versus Girlyman is another peak fight. It is so well written. They have a nice little back and forth about courage and honor, and Angron is brutalizing Girlyman. Angron is straight up destroying him there. Here's a little excerpt from it. Angron and Rebute still fought, with the Lord of the Ultramarines giving ground each time Angron landed a blow. For all of Lokir's disgust, he had to grant a shade of respect to his Genesire. Girlyman had no hope against Angron. The former Legion Master wasn't sure anyone would have. Angron plunged his chainsword up against Lord Girlyman's breastplate. A shallow stab, but a telling one. So Angron is straight up going to kill Girlyman, but is only saved by Lorgar's intervening by ascending Angron to demonhood. It even says right here in Betrayer, a little bit later during their fight, Angron himself still fought Girlyman, standing above the kneeling Ultramarine. Sparks sprayed from Girlyman's raised gauntlets as he struggled to ward off blow after blow. He was beaten, he was down, wounds painted him, a palette of proud defeat. Even now, his warriors were fighting to retrieve him. So he's down. And Lorgar even says he would be lucky to ever walk again. It's crazy. Girlyman gets straight up defeated, and even the text even says that Girlyman had to be dragged away, just like Leman Russ. It's a great moment for Angron. Just overall, it's well written. It sets the stage perfectly for Angron's ascension to demonhood, and it makes perfect sense for power scaling. It does a great justice, honestly, for both Lorgar and Angron for power scaling, and I guess Girlyman is there. He's always just there getting beat the fuck out of, but he always comes back for round, 9 now? How many Primarch fights has Girlyman had? Let's count. We got 1, 2, he's got 3, 4, 5, 6. He's got 6 Primarch fights. He doesn't win a single one. Bummer. Oof. I think I was going to include Corfarion on here. Corfarion versus Girlyman in the book No Fear, but then I was like, I'm just going to talk about Psychers being the greatest weapon against the Primarchs, but I didn't include it because it's technically not a Primarch on Primarch fight. I included the Emperor versus Horus because that's like the most iconic fight from the 30K era, so I included that one, but I did not include Mr. Corfarion, the bald priest of Colchis. So yeah, these are 2 peak fights. Do I even need to say anymore? Greatly written. You guys need to go check out Betrayer if you have not already. So now we come to Lion Jonson and his many fights with Conrad Curze, starting with the book Savage Weapons. So Savage Weapons is a short book. I think it's only like 30-ish pages about the Thramas Crusade between the Dark Angels and the Night Lords. And in this book, Conrad Curze and the Lion meet on this abandoned planet with 2 of their equerries. So the Dark Angels come with Corswain and Aljos, and the Night Lords come with Shang and Sevatar. Of course, the 2 Primarchs end up fighting, and we get some insanely cool moments. We get the Lion blitzing Curze and telling him the coolest catchphrase ever. I don't care if anyone knows, Now or in 10,000 years, loyalty is its own reward. I don't know about you guys, but my jaw almost dropped to the floor and I had goosebumps for a week. So we get that moment. We get Curze and the Lion fighting. We get Corswain stabbing Curze in the back to save Lionel Jonson, who's getting strangled. And Corswain literally rides him like a goddamn horse. It's a fucking peak fight. And it makes sense for power scaling. So we see that the Lion is a great duelist and that Curze is inferior to him. But when Curze uses his insanity and just overall craziness, he launches himself at the Lion. They tumble down a cliff, and then the Curze ends up on top of him, and he begins to strangle him. So with context, the power scaling makes sense. Just overall, it's fucking cool, guys. I would highly recommend reading Savage Weapons. It's a peak book. It's very short. It's great moments for the Dark Angels and Corswain specifically. Would highly recommend reading this book. Yeah, but this is a great fight. It's peak. Most of their fights are honestly awesome because Lionel Jonson and Curze, perfect rivalry. So next we have Curze's second-ish fight. This is kind of funny. I'm looking at this. This is like the Curze alley. This is like this part of the Horus Heresy, the Imperium Secondus arc, and the Thrombus Crusade is literally Curze alley. He has so many goddamn fights. He has 6 in total. And, oh, there's the cat. Hold on one second. If you guys don't know, I have a sweet little kitty, and he likes to yell at me. Let me get him out of here real quick. So, Prince of Crows is kind of 2-ish Primarch fights, since in the prologue, we see them fight, and the Lion soundly kicks the shit out of Curze, to put it politely, sending him into a coma, and then later in the book, Curze awakens, and the Lion and him fight again. And that fight isn't really conclusive since Curze runs away into the bowels of the Invincible Reason, where we find him in the Unremembered Empire book. So, what do we do with this duel? So it's kind of weird. This is the conclusion of the Thrombus Crusade. The Lion has just ambushed Curze in the beginning of the prologue, puts him in a coma, and then later we see them fighting. Sevatar, who is the main perspective of this book, even remarks that they're fighting fairly, and Curze is holding his own. So, it's a cool book. It's a very cool short novel, I would say. I think the fights are off-screen, kind of. The prologue is literally, it's a prologue, so it's a smidge. It's a little smidge of a fight, and it's the end of the fight. So we get the outcome again. Fucking Angron versus Russ type shit. I've never said type shit on the channel, but now we have, and that's opened the door for a lot more fun, colorful lingo type shit. I'm gonna say this is a solid B tier because the Lion and Curze always have great fights, as we've seen in the Savage Weapons, and I just wish we saw more of this fight. But the ending fight, where we see Sevatar's point of view, we see his narration on what's going on between Curze and the Lion. And then the prologue is pretty cool because the Lion's like, I told you I would kill you. And it's like, whoa, chill out, Mr. Lion. You're giving me goosebumps. I just think it's very well written compared to, say Angron versus Russ. And it's just not as much controversy. So I'm gonna leave it in a B tier. You could argue C tier because once again it's off screen, but I think it's a solid B tier. Then we come to Curze's fourth fight versus Vulkan in the book Unremembered Empire. And this book, first off, is fucking insane. It's awesome. It's cool. Would highly recommend. Let me take a sip of coffee. Hold on one second. Went down the wrong pipe. Okay. So first off, Vulkan in this fight is completely insane because he fell from orbit following the events of Vulkan Lives. You know where he teleports out? Yeah, he teleported on top of the Macragge atmosphere. And that doesn't really feel good, I imagine. So he crashed down, smashed into a million pieces, just gets discovered, and then he senses that Curze is on the planet, because of course he is. So Vulkan and Curze end up dueling. Vulkan hunts him down. And in this book, Vulkan dies so many goddamn times just because he is a perpetual. I love Dan Abnett. I love his books. But he wrote Vulkan to be a literal brick wall. He dies so many times. But that's besides the point. So their fight between Vulkan and Curze is cinematic. It's very peak. They fight from the rooftops of Macragge, and Curze obviously kills Vulkan several times. But yeah, that's how the duel goes. Vulkan is chasing Curze around. Curze is dodging, avoiding him, parrying him, and then killing him, and then Vulkan snaps back awake. So that happens a lot. Eventually, Curze escapes onto a Storm Eagle, and Vulkan follows him. So the fight continues on a Storm Eagle, and at that point, Vulkan gets hit in the face with a mace, and he crashes 30 feet from the air, 30 meters in the air, so that's what? Couple dozen feet up in the sky, smashes down on a wall, breaks his spine. And as the great announcers from the Phantom Menace bod race scene said, that's gotta hurt. So, Vulkan dies a lot. That's my only real problem with this duel. I would have put it in peak if it wasn't for that, but he's a fucking Primarch, and at the end of the day, he should not be dying over and over and over again. He's physically the strongest Primarch. He should have put up a better fight against Conrad Curze. That is my only problem with this duel. Besides that, it is cinematic peak. So that goes into solid A tier. Up next, the Lion and Girlyman versus Curze. This is in the same book. Curze ambushes the two as they are searching for him. He is, throughout this book, he's kind of just been a menace. He's a fucking menace. And his whole plan when he ambushes them is to set off a bomb he has planted. And he actually technically succeeds. He holds them off, blows up the building they're in, and escapes. But they're only saved, Girlyman and the Lion, because of the Ferrus device, which is the ultimate plot device. But it's actually like a unique plot device, so I'm not going to shit on it more. But they pretty much get pulled to another world. So they get saved by this Deus Ex Machina machine. But he pretty much achieves his goal, and it really shows off that Curze is kinda that guy. This is another S tier fight. I think it's probably behind these two fights, but it's still very well written. It shows off that Curze is one of the best fighters in the Imperium at this time during the Heresy because of his precognition. He's able to see the future briefly ahead of time, which allows him to duel two Primarchs at once. I do believe it's said, though, that the Lion thought Girlyman was kind of a detriment to their side, that he had to worry about keeping Girlyman alive at the same time as dueling Curze. So that makes sense in the power scaling logic. So overall, very cool fight, very well written. It makes sense, and the power scaling is off the charts. So that's another S tier fight. I would highly recommend reading Unremembered Empire, guys. It has multiple Primarch duels. It has Curze being an absolute terroristic menace, and it has some of the best Primarch interactions in the whole Heresy. Go pick it up at your local Barnes & Noble. Alright, we have another Curze fight. Sanguinius and Curze in the book Ferrus. So, I like this fight a lot. I think it's another A tier pick. So in this duel, Curze surprises Sanguinius in his throne room after the Lion and Girlyman have left. So they're not on the planet right now. They're on Macragge. Sanguinius is the acting emperor of the Imperium Secundus at this point. So Sanguinius gets ambushed kind of by Curze. I wouldn't say it's an ambush because they have like a fat monologue in between about Foresight and the Emperor and how Curze is a schizophrenic wonder. But they duel for a short period of time. I think it's maybe 2 paragraphs. And in that paragraph, they trade blows evenly. Each of them can see the future. Each of them have precognition. And they duel. They straight up draw. Because it's said that they are evenly matched. Now, thing to note is, as you see in this artwork, Sanguinius is literally in a bathrobe, and he has a random sword, and that's when he fights Curze. So it's pretty insane that Sanguinius, without power armor, without his weapons, can evenly match Curze, just on his foresight and base abilities alone. It's fucking insane. Huge upscale for Sanguinius in power scaling terms. Let's talk about foresight just for a minute. So, in 40K, Foresight is not the perfect future, as many of you know. It's random sights, random visions of random occurrences that may happen. You see all possible futures, but you don't know which one is true. So in this scenario, Sanguinius sees multiple potential outcomes, and he uses that vision as kind of a guidance, trying to protect others and shape a better future. He believes pretty much that fate can be cheated. So when he sees his eventual death to Horus, he believes he can change that fate. Conrad Curze, on the other hand, believes fate is fixed and unavoidable. He saw his death at the Emperor's hands, or I guess the Emperor's assassin's hands, and accepted it as absolute truth. So he never tried to change that future, he actually embraced it. So every atrocity he committed, every nightmare act he saw, he was justified, quote unquote, in those actions. That means Curze's foresight is extremely accurate because he is looking for one potential future. He is looking for that future where he dies to the Emperor's hands, which means if you're looking, say, you're looking for the future, you're looking at the future and you see all these possible visions, you're going to keep looking for that one, oh, there it is, that you die to the Emperor's hands. His foresight was so accurate during this book, or the books preceding it, that he was able to see a Dark Angel soldier opening a door and able to slip through that door. That's how accurate it was during this book. Meanwhile, Sanguinius only began seeing like the same accurate foresight as Curze after he accepted his fate during the Siege of Terra. So his precognition wasn't the best until the later events of the books where he knew he was going to fight Horus, but he still thought he might be able to change it. If that makes any sense. I don't even know why I brought that up, but fuck it. Falling down autistic tangent. Yeah, but this is a great fight. It just shows off that it's the first time we've ever seen two opponents with precognition fight each other, and it's really awesome to see. It's really well written. I thought it was a great inclusion in the book Ferrus that was lacking in any Primarch fights until this. It's just overall a great book. Great Sanguinius, great Curze moment. Love it. A tier. I just wish it was longer. That's the only flaw in it. I wish it was longer. There's a lot of talking, not a lot of fighting, but a solid A tier pick. Next up, we have the final Lion vs. Conrad Curze duel. Oh my god. And the book Angels of Caliban. Finally, the rivalry ends, and it's an S tier pick. I think it's probably right around here. Yeah. It's another great fight. The Lion hunts down Curze, and they duel one last time. And in this monologue they have before they fight, the Lion admits he never was trying to kill Curze, which does not sound very accurate or consistent amongst the lore. So I don't know how to take that. I just think it's authors not communicating, but whatever. So the Lion captures Curze and absolutely beats the shit out of him. They fight, they duel, and the Lion wins. And as he said, he's not going to kill him. Instead, he grabs him by the leg and smashes him around like he's the Hulk and Curze is Loki. I'm not kidding, guys. Look up Angels of Caliban. It's an insane scene. The Lion picks him up by the ankle and just goes, fuck it. Smashes him around like he's a little child. And once again, it shows that Curze is not a duelist, but simply a madman. And that when it really comes down to, even with foresight, he can't best the Lion. So, in terms of power scaling, it makes complete sense. The Lion is the better duelist, the better warrior, and Curze is just a madman with precognition. He's still really powerful, but he's not that strong. Still an easy S tier. The power scaling makes sense, it's well written, and it's a natural conclusion to their rivalry. Up next is Dorn vs. Alfarius from Praetorian of Dorn. And this duel is so weird. So, Alfarius, he's either a loyalist or a traitor. We don't really know. I'm leaning towards that he's kind of neutral. He's trying to defeat chaos in his own unique autistic way, and obviously it makes no fucking sense. But he attacks Pluto on the orders of the War Master to gather intelligence, and he ends up dueling Dorn. And in this duel, both of them are honestly kind of evenly matched, which is kind of surprising since Alfarius is supposedly the smallest and physically weakest Primarch. But the reason why Alfarius did this whole thing was to talk to Dorn. And he did this by launching 200 ships at the Pluto system, the defense system, and activating sleeper cells across the Sol system to cause destruction. So he's like, sorry, Dorn, I burnt down your sandcastle. Let's talk about true victory. Come here. Let's talk about true victory. If I was Dorn, I'd been like, what the fuck? This guy's a little silly. This guy's a little silly guy. Alfarius's reasonings for doing this doesn't make a lot of sense, and I think it's the biggest flaw of this duel. that the reasons they're dueling, the reasons that Alfarius is there does not make a lot of sense. Like, imagine I came to your house, I lit it on fire, and then tried to talk to you. I tried to convince you that you should be saving your money differently. You would be like, what the fuck? This guy's... Who the fuck are you, first off, and why are you burning down my house? Exactly. That's pretty much what Alfarius tried to do. Not the best manipulation. Come on, Alfarius. You need to learn better how to gaslight, gatekeep, and I don't know what the third thing is. Gaslight, gatekeep, and greenhouse gas. Let's say that. How do I rank this duel? So the ultimate fate is Dorn Count Dooku's Alfarius. He cuts off his hands and then decapitates him. So does not really go well for Mr. Bald Boy over here. So Dorn ends up winning this duel. How do I rank this again? Well, the fighting is not horrible, but once again, the reasons Alfarius is fighting in this duel in the first place is not the greatest. I think it's all right. The way it's written, it makes sense. I would say it's a pretty solidly ranked duel. It's a very cool fight. They're fighting in the Pluto defense system. Both of their guards have fought each other. You have the Larian Terminator guards, and you have the Hersicles fighting each other, which is super cool. I think it's stated in the text, Praetorian of Dorn, that both Alfarius and Dorn were rampaging through each other's personal bodyguards, which is also a very cool fact. Power scaling wise, it tracks Alfarius is the smallest Primarch, and theoretically, he may not have a full Primarch soul within him. I don't know if that's confirmed by the lore. I think it's stated in Head of the Hydra that I think Alfarius said that when he met Omegon and they fought together, it felt like two halves of one soul fighting in unity or something like that. I could totally be wrong, but I think that is what the text says. But either way, Alfarius does put up a pretty good fight against Dorn. There's also the issue where Alfarius lands a strike with the Pale Spear when Dorn goes in to tank it to end the duel. Shouldn't the Pale Spear disintegrate Rogel Dorn's whole shoulder? Like, shouldn't... The Pale Spear is supposed to be able to atomize whatever it touches, and Dorn just tanks it like a fucking god. Granted, he's a Primarch, but shouldn't there be some sort of damage there? I don't know. It's a little strange. It's once again another John French Primarch duel. I'm going to put it in B tier. Probably back here. It's like solid. It makes sense, but if you dig a little too deep, stuff starts to kind of fall apart, and you're kind of like, what? Huh? Who? I don't know. I'm gonna say it's a solid B tier pick. I think it lands there. I love Rogel Dorn. There's a little bias there, but who doesn't love the autistic Lego gang? All right, next up. Oh boy, Horus versus Leman Russ in Wolfsbane. I think we can all agree about this one. This duel is the biggest pain in my ass. If you guys think the Angron versus Leman Russ causes controversy, the Horus versus Leman Russ fight in Wolfsbane is the bane of my existence. Oh man, let's get into it. So this fight, it's crazy because this is post Molech Horus. So post Molech Horus is the form of Horus after he receives an obscene warp boost in the Molech gate on the planet Moloch. Okay, yeah. The Emperor went into that gate decades prior and gained the information and the power from the Chaos Gods to theoretically create the Primarchs. Now Horus does the same exact thing, but he instead just gains up straight power. Once he leaves the warp gate on Moloch, he is obscenely powerful. He's probably the strongest Primarch at this time, and he's literally so stuffed with the warp that his form is changing and moving, like we see with Magnus and the Emperor and Malkador, who are obscenely powerful psychers. So Horus is now theoretically on their power level right there and then in his post-Molech form, and he's not even at his strongest yet. So this is the form that Leman Russ fights. Leman Russ, the guy who lost to Angron, who needed a shit ton of context to beat Magnus the Red, who technically lost to the Lion. Even if you don't factor in his sucker punch, he still technically lost. There was a death blow involved. Come on, disarmed. Come on, guys. So Leman Russ, on the other hand, he has no improvements, no amps, no nothing. He just has the Dionysian Spear or the Spear of Russ. I don't think people realize that this might be one of the most broken weapons, at least in single combat, there is in the setting. First off, the Dionysian Spear is an incredibly powerful anti-chaos weapon, okay? It's literally stated in their duel that wherever the Dionysian Spear struck, the aura of chaos surrounding Horus shrunk. It shrunk. So that means every time he struck him, he was nerfing Horus. The spear itself nerfs Horus just by being around him, okay? That's number one. He's got another fucking nerf. It's like, he's literally context, man. We talk about this in my Discord all the time. Leman Russ needs context every fucking time he duels, but whatever. So it's the Dionysian Spear. The spear he has is already an incredibly powerful anti-chaos weapon. Number two, it has its own arcane power. So it's stated in Wolfsbane. Please, if you disagree, go read Wolfsbane. It said that this thing was literally shooting out lightning and its own arcane power whenever it struck Horus's weapons, his Talon or Worldbreaker. It was shooting out lightning. It was shooting out arcane power. It's already an anti-chaos weapon, and it shoots out lightning. It summons lightning. That's insane. Third, it's stated the spear thrummed with palpable delight at being used. Its point shivered through gaps in Horus's defense. So, like, is the goddamn spear sentient? Oh my god, it's insane. Like, okay. 1, anti-chaos. 2, shoots lightning. 3, it may be sentient. And that's not it, guys. Once the spear plunges into Horus just once, it completely drains him of all chaos and corruption, leaving a permanent wound that is not healed until the events of Slaves to Darkness. Now, let me read an excerpt from this. So, Horus stabs him, or Leman Russ stabs Horus once. He lands 1 blow on him, and that is only because Horus skewers him in his right pauldron, and he's going up for his killing blow with Worldbreaker. And as he's swinging down, Leman Russ tears out of his grasp, ripping off his armor and his own flesh to stab him once. Just to stab him once with the Spear of Russ. He lands that blow, and Horus immediately gets stunned. And then Leman Russ stabs it further into him, unleashing the 4th special ability the Dionysian Spear has. Here, I'm going to read a little excerpt from Wolfsbane here. So, Horus roared in agony. His maul slipped from his fist as he shook violently. His head jerked back, and a blast of white-hot soul fire blazed from his mouth, cracking the armored cowl above him. When Horus looked up, the unholy aura had vanished from around his head. His flesh hung slack upon his skull, and he had aged 1,000 years in an instant. So it can also nullify chaos to almost base level. That's crazy. That's literally crazy. Horus is steeped in chaos right now, and this spear was able to suck it out instantly. Now, this effect doesn't linger, but the wound Leman Russ gives him lingers till the events of Slaves to Darkness. But the wound still affects Horus until after the events of Slaves to Darkness. So, it's a fucking broken spear, guys. And I feel like people don't credit that Leman Russ had a broken spear when he fought Horus. They make it seem like he fought Horus all by himself, this post-Molech form Horus. But no, it was the fucking spear, man, which causes even more controversy. This fight is worse by miles compared to this. Sure, we didn't see what happened, but we knew what happened. I mean, we can all assume Angron would have won that fight. This fight, it's like, oh man, it drives me nuts. I will give props to Russ. He was able to dodge and tank some strikes from Horus, so he's not a complete bum like I'm making him appear. He was able to fight for a quick moment. I don't think the fight's that long either. I think it's 6 or 7 pages. It's definitely better than what we see in Ashes of the Imperium, but it's still a relatively shorter fight, maybe slightly less than the average fight. It's hard, man. Like, it's well written. Even that is questionable now I'm thinking about it. Leman Russ is just chucking himself at Horus in the attempt to wound him, or... Now, you could make the argument that due to this wound, Lorgar eventually turned on Horus because he was wounded, and that resulted in Lorgar and most of the Wordbearers abandoning the siege beforehand. But I rebuttal that I feel like this spear wound did not really have an overall effect on Horus. As we see in Slaves to Darkness, half of his soul is still in the Warp Gate, which is the true reason why he is nerfed. I think the Spear of Russ wounded him, but I think that Horus's current state, where half of his soul is split, resulted in him and this wound affecting him more than it would have, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is, when Horus entered the Molech Gate, the Warp Gate, he left a portion of his soul that would not submit to the Chaos Gods behind, okay? So he is already, in this post-Molech form, he has not reached his full potential because half of his soul is still in the warp. Conflicted. Not obeying the Chaos Gods completely. He still thinks, that portion of his soul still thinks he can command the Chaos Gods, which, as we all know, does not exactly work. So, Horus leaves the Warp Gate with only half of his soul. This version fights Leman Russ. Leman Russ wounds him with the Spear of Russ, and this wound does not appear until months later during the Beta Garmon War, where he collapses to the ground and he's like dying. My rebuttal is that was going to happen regardless. It was only a matter of time, and that the Spear of Russ sped up that process. You could totally argue with me, and I would totally see your valid arguments, and I'd love to chat about it. Just comment below and we'll chat. But I think that was the reason. I don't know if the Spear of Russ was the prime suspect for Horus's current state. I think it was a contributing factor, but I think him only having a portion of his soul is the main symptom of why he would collapse in the end of the Beta Garmon campaign. And then we see in Slaves of Darkness, where Malachur sacrifices himself to recombine the two souls, he is healed. So I think that was the main reason why, and that the Spear of Russ was mainly a factor that contributed to that the Spear of Russ was mainly just a contributing, that the Spear of Russ was mainly just a driving force that sped up that process. Now, you could also argue that the Spear of Russ, it caused him. That's just my 2 cents on it. You could definitely argue, like I said, but that's my 2 cents on it. But now we're going back to why did Leman Russ fight? Why did Leman Russ and Horus fight? I kind of got lost there in a little tangent. Sorry. This fight irks me so much that I love to talk about it. They fought because Leman Russ wanted to get to Horus because he didn't want to sit on the throne world. He wanted to attack Horus and possibly kill him. Did not go very well for the Space Wolves. Their legion is destroyed, and Leman Russ is out of the heresy. The real reason why this happened is because Leman Russ was not present during the siege in the old lore, so they sent him out in the narrative. They just said, fuck it, send him into space, let's go have him fight Horus, let's give him his own little fight, because he's not going to be at the Siege of Terra. That's the out-of-universe explanation. He wasn't at the siege in prior old lore, so they did not include him in the new retelling of the Horus Heresy, which they changed some stuff with Jagatai Khan and Perturabo that made it way better than the old lore had. I don't know why they didn't do the same thing for Leman Russ. They kind of shafted Leman Russ, Corvus Corax, Alfarius, and Omegon. Maybe Vulkan to a certain extent, and definitely Ferrus Menace. They shafted several Primarchs, and they didn't give them great lore because they were deciding to limit some Primarchs to their old lore status, but then they updated some other guys. Like Perturabo and Jagatai Khan were not in the old lore at the siege, but they changed that. But they didn't do that for some of the Primarchs. So, I don't know. It would have been a much better narrative if Leman Russ was there. Sorry, I'm getting very, very distracted again. So let's just keep it simple. Is it cool? Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool fight. I mean, it's Leman Russ fighting the avatar of evil in 40k at this point. But he ends up sacrificing his whole legion, his fleet, and kind of himself to deal one wound to Horus, which ultimately does not matter a ton, so to say. Maybe it matters a little bit if you want to say that the Spear of Russ is the main culprit behind Horus's wounding, so I guess that makes sense. But I don't know. Is it well written? Not really. Not really. I'm just gonna say that much. It's not really well written. Power scaling wise, Leman Russ should get trounced here, and he kind of does, but he has the Dionysian Spear, which kind of counteracts that. I mean, guys, think about it. If he was wielding his Frosttooth sword and his axe, and he wounded Horus once with that sword, Horus would have immediately regenerated and the duel would have been over. If he didn't have the Dionysian spear, Leman Russ would have been a walking bucket. He would have been fucked. So, sorry, I'm swearing a lot in this video. I apologize. I'm just very passionate about Primarch Duel. So, I'm going to leave it in Cow's Corral. I'm just not a fan of this duel. It just creates a weird precedent in the lore that just confuses a lot of people, and it confused me for the longest time until I really took an in-depth look at Wolfsbane and realized, oh, the Dionysian spear is just broken as hell. You know, and I don't know. It's just frustrating, and it doesn't make sense in lore. It's not a very cool fight on paper. It's a real bummer, and I wish Leman Russ was more involved during the tail end of the heresy. Instead, he gets put out to dry and straight up knocked out of the series in one silly little book. So that's where I'll put the fight in Wolfsbane. Very controversial. I'm going to get a lot of hate for it. I'm going to get a lot of love for it. So you hate it or you love it? Drop it down what you think in the comments. So now we move on to another post-Molech fight. This actually might have happened. No, this happens afterwards. Another Cow's Corral. This book, I don't think anyone knows about this fight. I didn't know about this fight until maybe a couple months ago. Horus and Jagatai Khan fight in the Battle for Beta-Garmon Age of Darkness campaign book. They fight in the campaign book. It's very small fight. No one ever talks about it. Like I said, I didn't even know it existed until a couple months ago. And Horus absolutely craps on Jagatai Khan. So why do I hate this fight? It's very short. It's a footnote in the campaign book. It's a fucking Primarch book, and they couldn't even give it its own due justice. Why is this not in Titan Death, which is about the Battle of Beta-Garmon? They threw it in some random campaign book, and they didn't seem to coordinate with any of the actual Black Library authors. They just kind of fucking... I'm going to imagine this. Jagatai Khan versus Horus Lubergal. And then it gets worse, guys, because apparently in this campaign book, Horus gains another buff. The whole campaign book is centered around Horus doing another ritual to gain even more chaos powers. But that doesn't make any sense because Horus already gained a buff after his Molech excursion. And that it doesn't make any sense. Why would he need even more chaos powers when he already has reached what is assumed to be the height of his chaos corruption? It doesn't make any sense. So, according to this campaign book, Horus succeeds in this ritual, he gains even more power, and then he fights Jagatai Khan. So it's not the same one Leman Russ is fighting, not the same form of Horus. Apparently it's a Horus even more amped. I don't even know how you could be more amped. It doesn't make any sense. So first, right off the bat, I don't think it's cool. I think it's stupid. I think it's lame. I think it should be jettisoned into space with all the terrible recipes at Del Taco. I think it should be burned at the stake with 30 flamethrowers. It's just not cool. Is it well written? No. It's very short. They fight. The Khan throws a ton of, it said, blistering strikes at Horus, but Horus impassively blocks them all as if he's not even looking at the Khan, and then he kicks him away. He just kicks him. He kicks him once, and the Khan is stunned. Somehow he gets just kicked. He just gets kicked, and then he just lays there. And Horus walks over and stands above him, and then the Khan gets teleported away before the death blow comes. I'm just as surprised as Pikachu right now. It doesn't make sense. I mean, sure, it makes sense the Khan would challenge Horus, but why was it, once again, why was this not in Titan Death? It just feels shoehorned in, and it's not cool. It doesn't make sense, and the power scaling, I guess the power scaling tracks is post-Molech Horus, but yet again, why the fuck does he need another amp? Why does post-Molech need another amp, guys? It doesn't make sense. The Khan doesn't have anti-chaos weapons, and he still manages to survive an encounter with post-Molech Horus, so I don't know if that's an upscale for the Khan, or if he puts him at the same level as Leman Russ, maybe less than Leman Russ, or maybe more. Who knows? You'll find out next week in Jagatai Khan versus Leman Russ, the duel video. Remember, guys, that's coming out next week. Remember, put it on your calendar. But yeah, the Khan escapes through teleportation, which is Abaddon's favorite way to escape death. I hate it. I think it's a stupid duel. If you guys want to read more about it, just look up the Beta-Garmon Khan versus Horus fight, and you'll find it on Reddit. That's where I found it. It's stupid, and I hate it. Third, there we go. Now we come to Slaves of Darkness, which has 3 Primarch fights, and all of them are pretty damn good. So first off, we have Lorgar's fight with Mr. Fulgrim. So in this fight, Fulgrim is kind of fucked off. He's kind of just chilling in the warp with Nakari, and they're just going at it. And Lorgar has been sent by Horus to retrieve Fulgrim for the final push for Terra. And Lorgar arrives. He has his 50 word bearers with him and his special weapon, Zardulayak, who has Fulgrim's true name. And Fulgrim and Lorgar fight briefly, while Zardulayak slowly says Fulgrim's true name and gains control over him. I really like this fight. It really shows how far Lorgar has come. It's definitely either A or S tier. I think it's A tier because it's still a pretty short fight. But first off, it's very cool. It's amazing. We're in a Slaaneshi pleasure world, buried deep in the warp. Fulgrim and Lorgar fight. Lorgar is gonna lose, but he also puts up quite a competent fight, showing his power progression from the beginning of the series, where Corvus Corax absolutely dominates him, to where we are in the end of the Horus Heresy and Slaves of Darkness, the last 5 books. And Lorgar is able to stand up to a demon Primarch and fight them for some time before Zardulayak is able to enslave Fulgrim. It's awesome. It's freaking awesome. You get to see Lorgar's true potential on display, and that he's not some wimpy little preacher loser. I love it. It's a great fight. I'm going to leave it an A tier just because, once again, it's kind of a shorter fight, a little bit of a shorter fight. But it's cool, it makes sense, and the power scaling is impeccable. We get to see Lorgar really show off his stuff. Perturabo versus Angron, this is an S tier. I think it's one of the best fights in the series, but not because of what you think. It's not because of what you think. Where do I put it in S tier? I'm going to say it's below the Korvax versus Lorgar fight in the first Heretic, but I think it's easily one of the best Primarch versus Demon Primarch fights in the entire setting. And let me break down why. Before I continue, no, Perturabo does not straight up beat Demon Primarch Angron. I've seen a lot of people say, but Cal, isn't Perturabo one of the strongest Primarchs? He took down Demon Primarch Angron. No, buddy, he did. He did, you're not wrong. But he did not do it alone. He used his genius intellect, which is why this is one of the coolest fights. Perturabo, using his geniusness, creates the perfect trap for Demon Primarch Angron. Demon Primarch Angron runs into this trap headfirst, as expected by a little bonehead like him. Using artillery and bolter rounds, he wounds Angron, and then when he gets close, he and his iron circles tank blow after blow as Angron gets weaker and weaker. Now, I'm going to say, Perturabo tanking several strikes from Angron that are literally slicing through light itself is very, very impressive. In fact, this is Perturabo in a weakened form, because during the events of Angels Exterminatus, Fulgrim takes a significant portion of his life force, weakening Perturabo for the remainder of the heresy, and maybe the main reason Perturabo ascends to demonhood in the first place. But overall, it's a great fight because we get to see a Primarch use their intellect, which it seems most Primarchs don't have brains, to defeat an enemy that is otherwise much more powerful than them. So it's a great fight. It's cool because we're on a planet the World Eaters have just annihilated. They've killed everyone. We get to see Perturabo in his natural habitat using his brains. And power scaling, it makes sense. Perturabo doesn't straight up defeat him like everyone says. He uses his brains and his ability to manipulate his enemies into traps, like we see later during the Iron Cage. And he meticulously picks apart Angron, weakening him, allows him to have a conversation, and they leave the planet. It's awesome. It's an S tier. Easy pick. I highly recommend, once again, reading Slaves of Darkness. We come to our third fight, Horus versus Lorgar. This is it's a very short fight. Horus is immensely powerful now. He has just rejoined both of his souls, and Lorgar is going to attempt a coup against him, which does not go very well for Lorgar. Angron surprise attacks him with Worldbreaker, smacks him across the yard, and then he uses his new telepathic powers to throw Lorgar around like a ragdoll. It makes sense for power scaling. It's relatively cool. It's just a little short. I'm going to put it at the very end of A tier. I want to move this one up, honestly. Let's move this up here. Maybe this one. I think this is all good. Yeah, let's leave this here. These two are just too short. If these were longer fights, they would be the peak of S tier. But since it's just so short, I'm just going to leave it in A tier. But we get to see Lorgar attempt to use a coup, which is very cool for the plot. We get to see Horus in his first fully formed soul. He is the true ascendant vessel of chaos. So of course, Lorgar wasn't going to stand a ghost of a chance. But still, a pretty fun short duel. We get to see Horus at his peak and Lorgar at his lowest. I guess his lowest would be Corax. But once again, Lorgar's on his knees. Okay. We got 12 left. And some of these duels are really good and some of them are goddamn trash. Oh boy. Dorn versus Fulgrim in the book Saturn. This is hard, guys. I really like this duel, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. Fulgrim is a demon Primarch at this point. He should be insanely powerful, and he is a psyker. He crushed a Warhound Titan in the book Reflection Cracked. So he fights Rugel Dorn, and Rugel Dorn kind of stalemates him the whole time until Fulgrim grows bored, I want to say. And then Fulgrim abandons the fight and withdraws from the siege entirely. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes sense that Fulgrim abandoned the fight because Dorn is kind of a brick wall and there's no emotion there. There's nothing to gain from that. And as a servant of Slaanesh and you're fighting a boring yellow brick like Dorn, that must be hell. That must be your own version of hell. So it makes sense why Fulgrim abandoned the fight. But it doesn't make sense how they were able to stalemate in the first place. Fulgrim is a demon Primarch, okay? Like I said, that means he has enhanced speed, strength, durability, everything. Everything should be enhanced to the max. He can regenerate, as we see at the end of the fight, which he does at the, I don't know, he gets wounded several times throughout their duel, and then he decides to regenerate at the end for a climactic effect. There's also the note that he's fighting in his mortal form. He's fighting as Fulgrim used to look like instead of the evil purple snake dude that he actually is in this image. So he's actually fighting in his own mortal form. Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense on paper. Theoretically, he should crush Dorn easily. I don't even think Fulgrim lands a single blow on Rugel Dorn throughout this fight. He's a demon Primarch. And this fight just causes a lot of issues in the community, not as much as this one or this one. And even though I am slightly always biased to my autistic king, because me and him share the same problem of loving yellow bricks and autism, I'm just going to have to put it in either D tier or C tier because there's just, like, I mean, even when Magnus versus Russ and Magnus versus Angron or Horus versus Leman Russ, wow, Leman Russ just sucks. There is a lot of context here that explains this. I mean, you can hand wave it away with the fact that Fulgrim was not entertained by the duel, and I guess that's a plausible explanation. Or maybe that the Emperor's shield, the psychic shield around the palace, was maybe nerfing Fulgrim to some extent. But if you took this fight for what it is, you would think that Fulgrim is one of the weakest demon Primarchs. But that's just not true. He destroys Girlyman later. He already has killed Ferrus Menace. He's supposed to be one of the best duelists, and he can't fight Rugel Dorn, who has not been known as a great duelist or anything of that sort. In fact, Rugel Dorn almost lost to Alfarius. I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a tough one, and I love Dorn, and it's a thematic duel. It's cool on paper. Just the power scaling does not make sense. I'm gonna say it's behind. I'm gonna say it's C tier. I think it's a solid C tier. I really do like the fight. I think it's very well written. I love how it's the climactic end of the book Saturn. It's perfect in the Siege of Terra. It explains where Fulgrim goes or why he's not in the other books following it, like Warhawk or Mortis. But on the power scaling scale, it makes no goddamn sense. So we're gonna leave it in C tier and just say that Fulgrim got bored. He wanted to go do ketamine. He had a ketamine appointment with Dr. Phil. That's why he left and did not want to kill Rugel Dorn in seconds. Oh man, it's just another instance of the psychers not getting their due or the authors forgetting that certain characters have psychic abilities. Okay, so this is a fight that no one really talks about. This is Magnus versus Vulkan Part 1. So they have two fights. They have Echoes of Eternity and Fury of Magnus. So Magnus joins the traitor effort in the book Fury of Magnus, which is his own little novella about Magnus sneaking into the palace to gain his last shard, which is the noble shard we talked about earlier in the video, where he lost it when he shattered the webway before the heresy even started. So he's trying to get that his shard back. He realizes that shard is eternally lost. He kills Malcador, and then he gets into the throne room and fights Mr. Vulkan. This fight it's well written. I would say it's a B tier pick. It's also confirmed in this book that Magnus is actually not a demon Primarch yet. He's kind of like a warp entity of some sorts. I don't know. Here's an excerpt from the book. I need you by my side because your soul is still your own and still ruled by the better angels of your nature. That's the Emperor himself saying that. So, he's not a demon Primarch yet. He is a warp entity of some kind. He's definitely not mortal anymore, but he is not a demon Primarch, because how else would he get past the Emperor's wards? So the two fight, and it's very close. So the two fight in close combat, which is probably a mistake by Magnus. Why would you not just unlimited power him like the Emperor, like just shock him? But the two duel, and Magnus actually fights quite well, using his precognition, because he is a psyker, to predict all of Vulkan's moves and wounds Vulkan considerably while tanking a hammer to the dome. Magnus tears steel and deck plates around Vulkan and uses his psychic powers to bind him, bending even the legendary Draken Scale, which has survived multiple battles throughout the heresy. This is where we get some context though. Vulkan's sons intervene and they break Magnus's hold on Vulkan. Then they all jump Magnus. I'm not kidding. All the salamanders in the throne room and Vulkan jump Magnus, and they just beat the ever-living shit out of him. It's like a JJK jump fight. And then eventually, Magnus, before he dies, decides to accept Tzeentch's offer and ascends to demonhood, which we see him next in Echoes of Eternity. I think it's overall a pretty solid fight. It makes sense. It's all rightly written. I don't know why there's no one else in the throne room besides the salamanders and the space wolves and then Magnus and the Thousand Sons. Doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest, but oh well, oopsie-doo. So it doesn't make a ton of sense, but the power scaling, it does, and overall it's a very cool fight. I think B is a very solid spot because Magnus is shown to be superior than Vulkan. He would have killed him if it wasn't for a third-party intervention, but due to this intervention, Vulkan was able to emerge triumphant. Makes sense. Very cool. Well written. There's some flaws, but I think it's a solid B tier spot. And oh man, oh my, one of the best fights in all of 40K. Demon Primarch Mortartion versus the Khan. This is the peak of peaks. This duel is so goddamn good, and it really is the climactic finish of the amazing book that is Warhawk. If you guys have not read Warhawk and you are a White Scar fan, you are missing the hell out. This is one of the best books of the heresy and probably in the whole 40K mythos. I'm not kidding. It's very good. So this duel itself, the Khan technically wins. He banishes Mortartion, but at the cost of his own life. But context is everything in this fight. The Khan did not win with speed or swordsmanship, but he won with his insight and psychological might. So what I mean by that is he knows that from his fight with Mortartion, we discussed earlier in Scars, that he is arrogant and he is going to be dulled by his new immortality. He doesn't care about losing anymore because he thinks he's so powerful, and he is just overall mentally fogged by Nurgle's gifts. The Khan baits him because he held back intentionally throughout the fight, so Mortartion treats the fight like a nuisance rather than a true threat. If Mortartion had gone all out, if the Khan had gone all out from the start, Mortartion would have responded instantly and the fight would have ended in seconds because Mortartion is a demon Primarch at the end of the day. He is inherently just stronger than a normal Primarch. But Mortartion instead chose to play with his food. He got mentally sloppy, and that's when the Khan traded his life for a perfect banishment strike. It is comparable to Angron versus Perturabo. We see a base Primarch show off their insight, their generalship, and overall tactical might, because at the end of the day, they are supposed to be the perfect warriors. We see the Khan do this amazingly well in the Warhawk book, taking advantage of a Demon Primarch's weaknesses, which is their mental demeanor, I guess you could say, or the way that they hold themselves over other people. The Demon Primarchs think they are invulnerable. They think they are unkillable, because at the end of the day, they technically are, so they don't have the same fears as me and you. They don't care about death. They think they're immortal. But you can use those as a weakness. And the Khan does this perfectly. He exploits that and ends up banishing a Demon Primarch. It is a very well-written fight, and just overall, simply amazing. A peak fight for a peak book. Next, we have Magnus versus Vulkan. And this one, it's kind of, I think it's honestly worse than this one. It's a very long fight, which I'll give it credit for. But in this fight, Magnus is shown to be vastly superior. He's a Demon Primarch at this point, and kind of similar to the Khan, Vulkan cannot really straight up fight Magnus. Magnus kills Vulkan so many times, it's insane. At one point he atomizes him, one point he closes his mouth, he completely erases his mouth, so he suffocates and dies. He does this several times in various different ways, but Vulkan keeps coming back because he is a perpetual. He does this every single time, and eventually Magnus is wounded, he's beaten, he's broken, he's weakened, and then Vulkan lands a banishing blow on Mr. Crimson King. So why isn't this higher? Why isn't this a peak fight, you may ask? Why the hell does Magnus not do anything besides just kill him? Like I've gone over this so many times throughout my many lore videos talking about Demon Primarch Magnus, and eventually you come to the Echoes of Eternity fight, which is one of the anti-feats you could claim. And I guess context, once again, is everything, and it just doesn't make sense. Imagine, so the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. So at this point, Magnus has killed him, we don't know, but it's got to be over 20 times. After 10 times, you would start to think to yourself, this guy keeps coming back from the dead. Maybe I shouldn't, kill him again, because he's just going to come back. It's like Doctor Strange and Dormammu. Crazy analogy. But that's pretty much the situation. You have a Demon Primarch killing Vulkan over and over and over and over and over again, but not learning his lesson that maybe he shouldn't do that. And you could also say that's Magnus's character flaw. He's very arrogant. Maybe he thought if he just kept killing him over and over again, it would work. But that doesn't make any fucking sense. Magnus is also, he is an idiot, but he's not that stupid. I think after a couple of times, he'd probably learn, maybe I shouldn't just kill Vulkan over and over and over again. That's one of the biggest flaws I have with this fight, is that Magnus doesn't do anything else. If Aaron Dubinsky had written some other way that Vulkan was banished or killed or some other way, maybe a scenario where Magnus traps Vulkan instead of killing him outright, I would have had a better time believing this fight. But it's just kind of cartoony, the way Vulkan just keeps coming back and back and back, and I don't know. It just makes Magnus look even stupider than he has already been betrayed, which makes him look very, 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 very stupid. So I'm going to leave it in C tier. It's a very cool fight. It happens in the Webway during the Siege of Terra. It's very climactic. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to leave it in C tier. This one, oh my god, fucking A. Another S tier fight. This is one of the best fights in all of fiction. It's an absolutely peak fight. So before this even happens, Sanguinius duels Kabanda, the greater demon of Khorne, and kills him effortlessly. And then Angron arrives immediately after he defeats the greater demon, and the two fight. It is such a good duel and such a great send-off for Sanguinius, who is about to die in the End of the Death Part 2. So this happens 2 books before that in Echoes of Eternity. It's insane. Angron throws the Spear of Tiesto at Sanguinius, and he catches it in midair and chucks it back at Angron. How is that not cool, guys? And then he kills Angron by tearing out the butcher's nails from his head. What the hell, man? That's insane. Remember, guys, Sanguinius is also exhausted and has been fighting for months around the palace. God, what a fellow. I don't even know if I need to talk about this more. It's so cool. It's super climactic, and it's peak power scaling. It makes perfect sense. Sanguinius is in his prime form. He may be wounded, he may be exhausted, but his precognition is very, very accurate as he gets nearer and nearer to his fateful death at Horus's hands. Easily might be the best fight in all of Warhammer 40K between the Primarchs. We got 7 left. Sanguinius versus Horus. And this one is interesting, guys, because Horus versus Sanguinius, it's really not a close fight, but I think people like to think it's closer, or maybe they believe the older lore where Sanguinius wounded Horus that never happened once, ever. It didn't. It's not. The new lore states that Horus effortlessly killed Sanguinius in this fight, and Sanguinius, when Horus was locked in, so to speak, Sanguinius was literally a child, and Horus flung him around and killed him. But it's still a pretty good fight. Let's dive a little bit more into Horus versus Sanguinius. Let me continue by saying that Horus at this point is broken as hell. He is so powerful that he can bring Ferrus Menace back from the dead to talk to Sanguinius. He doesn't need to make a ghost or magic up some vision. The warp is in him to such a degree he can simply bring Ferrus back from the other side of death. Ferrus even goes on to state that he can melt the world into the sky, he can blow time away like the tufts of a dandelion, he can twist all of the materia into our universe into one knotted ball and summon inevitable cities. He can drag the dead from their tombs and their times and make them live as they once lived. But there's no finesse, it's the sport of a child. So Horus has all this power, he just doesn't know how to use it yet. Now, in this fight, Sanguinius is wounded and exhausted. I've talked about this before, but he has also killed, as stated, 1,000 demons and has just overall been awesome. The fight between Horus and Sanguinius is also awesome. Sanguinius fights Horus by flying around him and occasionally swooping down to stab at him. Horus is holding back though this entire time because he wants to turn Sanguinius to his side. Sanguinius hopes, on the other hand, that he can anger Horus and make him clumsy and unskilled. Then, at one point, Sanguinius beats Horus down to his knees and swings his sword down to sever Horus's neck when Horus finally fully unleashes his full power and blocks Sanguinius. Sanguinius tries to fly away, but Horus, using his powers, reaches into a third dimension and grabs Sanguinius' leg and pulls him back to the ground, which is insane. Sanguinius then has his wings broken. He still gets up to fight. Horus is surprised by this, and it's stated that Sanguinius moved at the speed of light, but Horus moved at the speed of sound. And then it's stated that Then in the final moments of the fight, it's stated that Sanguinius moved at the speed of light, but Horus moved at the speed of darkness, and then smacked him across the ventral spirit. Horus then picks up Sanguinius, who is clawing and scratching at him, and then kills him like a dog. It's very sad, but I think it's perfectly done the way this fight occurs. It's very long, it's very well written. I think it's an S tier, and it makes sense in power scaling. I feel like some people are mad that Sanguinius didn't put up a better fight, but this version of Horus was stronger than the Emperor, so it makes sense why this did not happen. Like, come on, guys. We all love Sanguinius, but it would not make sense for him to actually put up a fight against this version of Horus Lubrical. Alright, we're almost done. We got 6 left. I'm going to try to get through them fast. I think this video is already so goddamn long, it's insane. Horus versus the Emperor. I'm very gonna get... I don't know how I feel about this duel, guys. It's so long, man. And it's like constant, like, what's the word? There's so many fake outs where the Emperor might be dead, and then the Horus is like, oh, you're doing some little tomfoolery again. It happens a lot in this duel where it's like, oh, the Emperor's, oh no he's not, oh no he's not. It's like over and over again. But I mean, that's just how, and the Emperor is gonna have to kill Horus, and it makes sense because this is like the Horus heresy duel. This is the reason why this whole thing happened, is because we needed this fight. But it's very interesting because they go from fighting on a physical plane to fighting in multiple dimensions to fighting with Yu-Gi-Oh cards. It's all over the place. It might be a little too much. You know what I mean? That the book is it might be like half the book is the Horus versus the Emperor fight. I'm going to say it's A tier because it is well done. Dan Abnett does a great job. It just might be too long. It might be just too long and too in depth to be an S tier pick, but I still think it's one of the best Primarch duels. It's not even a Primarch duel. I just wanted to include it because it's like the 40K duel, the Emperor versus Horus Lupercal. I don't know. Pretty much how the fight goes is they fight, like I said, in the physical plane, then they escalate into multiple dimensional battles across realities, visions, and then Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Horus seemingly gains the upper hand multiple times, yet the Emperor counters by drawing on Horus's own power, regenerating, and fighting him over and over again. Horus eventually lets go of his chaos powers, and then the Emperor is able to drive an anathema into Horus's heart, and then the Emperor channels all of his psychic might into that blade, completely annihilating Horus from reality. It's more of like the Emperor surviving Horus Lupercal's onslaught until Horus gets a little too, doubtful of himself, and he lets go of all his powers. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about this duel. It could easily be a B tier, but I'm just going to leave it at the bottom of A tier because I think I'll get too shit on for that pick. I just think it's just too long, guys, and it makes sense why Dan Abnett had to do that because they're both such powerful entities, but it may have been a little too much for my simple cow brain. Okay, Girlyman versus Fulgrim. It happens in kind of two books, Nightbringer and Dark Imperium. I just put Dark Imperium there because it's the latest book. This is how you do a Demon Primarch fight. This is an S tier pick because I'll put it up here with the other Demon Primarch fights. Girlyman is not a good combatant, okay? Fulgrim is. Fulgrim easily dominates Girlyman. End of story. Girlyman should be dead. He kind of is dead, but I'll let it slide because Fulgrim's a loser and he didn't seal the deal. But that makes sense with Fulgrim's character. I think this is how you do a Demon Primarch fight. Girlyman loses, Fulgrim wins, Girlyman's almost dead. It makes sense. Makes sense for power scaling. It's cool. It's thematic. S tier. Peak fight. Well done. Corvus Corax versus Lorgar from the Shadow of the Past. So this happens only like 100, 200 years after the end of the Horus Heresy. Corvus Corax has embraced his warp powers. He is hunting Lorgar actively in the Eye of Terror, and they come upon each other. They duel. It's a pretty cool duel. They're crashing into buildings. They're blowing things up. The only problem I have with it is Lorgar is kind of, there's some context to this fight that Lorgar is multitasking. He's actively summoning a portal and he's trying to protect his sons at the same time. And then I'm like, when I was reading this fight, I was like, wait, doesn't Lorgar have a nuncio? Why isn't he using it once? So I feel like there's some flaws with this fight that stop it from being an S tier, but it's so cool that it's borderline S tier just from how cool it is. I mean, Corvax at one point literally says, I will find you, Lorgar, and I will destroy you, like he is Liam Neeson with wings. It's a very cool fight. They're turning into multiple forms and smashing into things. Lorgar is kind of straight up losing, which might be another flaw, like I said. Corax gets to show off his new powers, and we get to see Lorgar actually in his Demon Primarch form. I think there are a couple flaws to this fight, but I think it's a good length. I think it's well done. I'm going to put it at the top of A tier. Damn, Lorgar has a lot of fights too. How many does he have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's got like 5 fights. Damn, Lorgar's fights are all over A. Wow, what a well-written character. What a proper gentleman. He may be a bald, evil cunt, but he is a proper fighter. Okay, Magnus versus Girlyman. This is the bottom. Maybe it might be Cow's Corral. This is not how you do a Demon Primarch fight. Okay, so this is how the fight plays out. The two banter. Girlyman can't take warp fire. He gets stunned by it. He runs away. He gets entombed by falling debris. He breaks 3 with a mental amp. And Magnus is about to launch more spells, but look out, here come the reinforcements. These reinforcements are, who are they, guys? Say it with me, the Sisters of Silence. Magnus destroys multiple jets that are shooting at him, and then the Sisters of Silence arrive and nullify him. What? Magnus tries multiple times to use spells while the Sisters of Silence are in the vicinity, and of course, none of them work. God damn it, Magnus, why are you so stupid? So, Girlyman and Magnus continue their duel with the null Sisters of Silence in the mix. So there's 24 Sisters of Silence fighting with Girlyman. They're all stabbing and fucking shanking Magnus. He's getting ganged on again. They're nullifying all of his psychic powers though, so he is only fighting with his physical abilities. And it is then at this point that the Eldar arrive and they help defeat Magnus by telling Girlyman to throw him into the portal. Magnus is still able to hurt Girlyman with his magic, even with the Sisters of Silence around though, but it's very weak. So that's right before he gets tossed in the portal. Girlyman finally drives the Emperor's sword into Magnus, which results in Magnus releasing a massive shockwave that knocks everyone over. But it turns out when he stabbed Magnus, he was actually back through the warp gate. He came through, and the Eldar shatter it behind him, keeping him from returning. So, it's like context on a fucking magnitude of 700. Magnus is easily beating Girlyman. He could have atomized him. I don't know why he didn't do that. Could have easily defeated Girlyman. The Sisters of Silence arrive. They nullify him. Magnus is still fucking winning. Girlyman stabs him through the chest. Luckily gets him on the other side of this warp portal, and the Eldar close it behind him. It's stupid. This is from The Gathering Storm, The Rise of the Primarch. It's kind of like a codex. I don't want to say it's a codex, but it's not an actual book. It's like kind of like Arc of Omens, which we'll get to in a second. But it's all right. It's all right, guys. Maybe it's not D tier. I'm gonna put it in C tier, probably right next to Magnus versus Leman, or D tier. It's not Cow's Corral. I don't hate it, but there's just so much silly stuff that intervenes that makes it not really a duel. It's more just Magnus getting jumped by everyone and everything. That happens quite a lot. Everyone seems to hate Mr. Magnus. Okay, Girlyman Mortartion, and I think a lot of people might think it's up here, but it's an S tier, guys. This is a peak. This is a peak battle. We'll put it right up here. This is a very close battle. I don't think people know how close this fight was. So I'm gonna read it. So Mortartion and Girlyman trade blows actually, and Girlyman's able to actually hold his own for quite some time, which is very impressive for Girlyman and kind of a little bit of an anti-feat for Mortartion. Girlyman is able to literally put his Hand of Dominion in Mortarion's face and release a storm of bolter fire into Mortarion's face. And it's only until Mortartion begins to use his sorcery and psychic powers does he gain the advantage. But in a straight up physical duel, the two are kind of evenly matched. And overall, it's a very well written fight. I think it makes sense because Mortartion is fighting against the Emperor's sword, so maybe that has an effect on Mortarion's powers and abilities, because it seems that the Emperor's sword can affect his psychic abilities. But I think it's well written because at the end of the day, Mortartion still emerges triumphant. It's a good duel. It's a great conclusion to the Plague Wars trilogy, and overall, I enjoyed it quite a lot. Another peak fight. There's a lot of peak fights, honestly. Yeah, I thought there'd be a lot of dupers, but we're doing good. All right, last but not least, Lion Jonson versus Angron. Yeah, but this fight ends with some silliness. Now I'm thinking about it. So Mortartion injects Girlyman with the God Blight, which is a special disease created by Kugath Plaguebearer to kill even a Primarch. Girlyman is dying pretty much, and the Emperor intervenes, which kind of sucks. And then the Emperor, using Girlyman, possessing him, banishes Mortartion back to the Plague Garden, and in that act, he burns Murgle's garden itself, which is pretty insane. But I'm not going to include that because it's kind of past the duel. I think the duel is Mortartion and Girlyman dueling until Mortartion is able to infect Girlyman with the God Blight. But overall, a pretty solid duel. I actually really enjoyed this. I was very surprised that I actually liked the God Blight duel. All right, finally, Lion Jonson versus Angron. I'm going to say this is A tier. I think top of A tier. It's pretty well written. It's very cool because the lion just appears on Wormwood using his new Forest Walk ability. The only flaw I have with this is the Lion takes maybe 1 wound in this whole fight. He gets a tank tossed at him, but Angron doesn't land a single blow on the Lion. Not a single cut, wound, kick, toss, nothing. The Lion is able to evade him, maneuver around him, and outduel him. The Lion is able to trade blows with a demon Primarch. He may have the Emperor's shield, but he's still able to trade blows. I mean, it's accurate to power scaling because Angron is fighting the Lion, who is the duelist. I mean, the Chaos Gods even called the Lionel Jonson the duelist. I just wish Angron had a little bit more love here. That's the only problem I have with this duel that stops it from being S tier. Angron, he may be literally a beast now, driven by his rage and anger and his lust for blood and skulls, but he does not perform well here. He just charges after the Lion over and over again, which is in his character, but I feel like he should have landed at least a couple blows and maybe wounded the Lion a little bit, but all he does is toss 2 tanks at the Lion. The Lion dodges the first one and then gets hit by the second one. And then they fall into a chasm. The Lion evades Angron constantly and then causes him to jump on his own sword, impaling him, and then the Lion bashes his face in with the shield. It's a cool fight. It's very well written. I loved it. I just wish Mr. Angron had a little bit more love. And that does it for our rankings. I think we did pretty good. 36 duels in total. We had 2 in Cow's Corral, 4 in D, and 6 in C. So we had altogether 12 kind of mid duels. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We had 11 in A and B tier. So pretty good, solid rankings all across the board. And then we had in total 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 in peak. And these, I mean, honestly, pretty good spread across the board for all the Primarch duels. I think chiefly my favorite is Sanguinius versus Angron. That is one of the coolest duels in all of fiction. I would highly recommend reading Echoes of Eternity if you have not read it so far. But that does it for this video. This whole video was kind of dedicated to preparing and hyping up the start of my new series, which will be a duel series. We're going to be picking random characters from across 40K and just putting them against each other. It can be silly, it can be serious. I'm thinking about doing tag duels in the future, maybe group duels. So, I mean, I'm pretty excited to start this. I let my Patreon pick this one for the first time, and it's Leman Russ versus Jagatai Khan. Very excited for that one. I want to hear what you guys think. Who will win? Who will lose? You're gonna find out very soon. I'm literally filming this right now, 11:25. I just got back from Las Vegas, and let's just say I lost a lot of money at the roulette table. I actually put it in my Discord. I was like, black or red, guys, and bet did not go well. Yeah, so I'm getting this out today, 11:25. I'm gonna immediately start making the audio for my Leman Russ versus Jagatai Khan duel, and that will be out, hopefully, I'm praying, for this weekend, or maybe early next week, because then next week we're doing Chaos Warbands. Finally, I know I've delayed it for so long. It just took me so long to finish that script. It's damn near 60 pages. It's going to be almost 3 hours long. So hopefully that gets watched a lot. I'll be very sad if it doesn't. But, oh well, that's life, I guess, sometimes. But yeah, shout out my Patreon and YouTube memberships. You guys are the bee's knees. So that will do it for this video. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite duel is, what your least favorite duel is, and maybe who you would want to see in a future duel video. We like saying the word duel in this video. Oh my gosh. It's a Falling Cow staple at this point. Just like the word I digress. Yeah, but this does it for this video. I've probably said that like 4 times already, but I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you leave a like, and I will see you all very soon. Stay milked and take care now.